Clara arrived at Mrs. Lucia's mansion on a gray morning when the sky hung low and the air smelled of dampness and old walls. She carried a worn cloth bag, a simple white apron, and that uneasy mix of fear and hope that only comes when someone starts something new after losing almost everything. They had told her the house was large, elegant, and that the owner was strict but fair. Yet from the first step she took inside, something in her chest tightened, as if the air itself were heavier there. This wasn't just a house. It was a place frozen in time, where silence wasn't peace but control. The marble floor reflected every movement. The clocks ticked but none seemed to chime, and portraits of unsmiling faces covered the walls. Everything smelled of something too clean, too polished, like a home kept spotless but never lived in. Then Mrs. Lucia appeared at the top of the grand staircase, wrapped in a navy blue dress, her silver hair tied neatly at the back. Her steps were soft, almost soundless. She greeted Clara with a brief nod. No smile, just formality. She handed her a sheet of paper written in neat handwriting. Clean the main hall, the guest rooms, the dining room, and the upper hallway. But at the bottom, one line was underlined in red. Do not enter the last room at the end of the hallway unless instructed. Clara nodded without asking questions. People who need a job don't ask. She climbed the stairs with her cleaning bucket and rag, and as she passed the corridor, a chill ran through her arms. The hallway was lined with half-open doors except for the last one. That door was locked, and from underneath came a faint scent of jasmine and dust, a mix that felt both alive and forgotten. That door didn't look like just another door. It looked like a secret, disguised as wood. Days passed with the same quiet rhythm. Lucia spoke little. She left early each morning and returned at dusk carrying fresh flowers, always the same kind, never explaining why. Clara followed her routine dutifully, yet every time she went upstairs her eyes drifted toward that locked door. She didn't know why, but something about it pulled her in, and at the same time, a knot formed in her throat. The jasmine scent seemed to follow her everywhere, like a memory trying to breathe. One afternoon, while polishing the hallway floor, she heard a faint metallic noise from behind the forbidden door, as if something had fallen or slid across the floor. She froze. The house was quiet as a tomb. Carefully, she pressed her ear against the wood. A whisper? A sigh? It was too soft to tell. Her pulse quickened, but she didn't dare touch the knob. She hurried downstairs, convincing herself it was the wind, though she already knew the air in that house didn't move. That night, while eating alone in the kitchen, the house clock struck 9, and upstairs, the same faint sound echoed again. The next morning, Lucia waited for her at the stairs. Her calm, perfectly composed face betrayed no emotion. "Today you may clean the room at the end," she said in a quiet but firm voice. "But don't touch anything on the table." It was the first time Clara had been given permission to enter. Her breathing grew shallow. She turned the key and opened the door slowly. A rush of stale, perfumed air filled her lungs, dust particles floating like ghosts in the cold morning light. The curtains were drawn, but thin rays of sunlight cut through the fabric and fell across an old oak dresser. The walls were lined with a few small paintings, but one dominated the room. A large portrait of a young girl, maybe 10 years old, with brown skin and deep eyes. She wore a white dress with a blue ribbon at her neck. Her expression was sad, empty, as if caught just before a tear. Clara froze. Her mind refused to understand what her heart already knew. The girl in the portrait was her sister, Alma. Exactly the same face. The same small mole beside her lip, the same rebellious strand of hair over her forehead. A shiver ran down her spine. Her knees almost gave out. She stepped closer and saw a tiny inscription carved into the lower corner of the frame. "For my daughter, with eternal love. Alma," her sister's name, the one who had vanished 6 years ago, the one who never came home that rainy afternoon when she went to look for work. Clara felt her chest collapse. It couldn't be coincidence. Her sister's face, immortalized here, in another woman's house. A sound in the hallway made her flinch, She turned sharply, pretending to clean just as Lucia appeared at the doorway. "Everything all right?" the woman asked, her tone unreadable. "Yes, senora," Clara answered quickly, lowering her eyes. "Just following your instructions." Lucia nodded slightly and left. But before disappearing down the corridor, Clara caught a brief flicker in her eyes, something between sadness and warning. When she finished, she closed the door gently and descended the stairs with trembling hands. That night, she couldn't sleep. Over and over, she saw the girl's eyes from the eye painting, the same eyes that had once laughed beside her. And from that day on, every time she walked past the last door of the hallway, she swore she heard a faint whisper calling her name. That night, sleep refused to come. Clara lay on her narrow bed in the servants' quarters, the dim light of a small lamp flickering beside her. Her eyes were open, fixed on the ceiling as the same thought circled endlessly. It was her. The girl in the portrait was Alma. 6 years of silence, of guilt, of unanswered prayers, and now her sister's face reappeared inside a stranger's house. It wasn't imagination. She could feel it in her bones. That kind of resemblance doesn't happen by chance. Her mind drifted back to the day everything changed. It had been a gray afternoon, full of wind and drizzle. Alma, wearing her favorite white dress, had insisted on going out alone to deliver some job applications. "Don't worry, I'll be home before dark," she had said. Clara remembered standing at the door watching her little sister disappear down the muddy street, her hair tied with that same blue ribbon. That was the last time she saw her alive. When Alma didn't come back that night, panic replaced routine. They searched all the nearby streets, hospitals, police stations, everywhere. Days turned into weeks. Her mother stopped eating. Her father stopped talking. They hung missing posters on every wall. Missing girl. Alma Rivas, 17, brown eyes, dark skin, disappeared November 14th. The ink ran from the rain, but the hope didn't fade. For a while, Clara believed someone would call, that Alma would walk through the door and laugh about a misunderstanding. But no call ever came. Eventually the posters peeled away, the search teams disbanded, and the neighbors stopped asking questions. Life went on for everyone, except for Clara. She carried the guilt like a second skin. She replayed that last conversation over and over. If I had gone with her, if I hadn't let her leave alone, those thoughts never stopped. And now, here she was, standing in a house full of polished, furniture and silence, staring at her sister's painted face. The next morning, Clara served breakfast as usual, trying to steady her shaking hands. Lucia sat in her usual spot, sipping tea, perfectly composed, a thin smile on her lips. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, reflecting off the pearls around her neck. She didn't speak much, and Clara didn't dare ask. But every movement the woman made, the way she folded her napkin, the way her eyes drifted toward the upstairs hall, made Clara's stomach twist. When Lucia finally left the house, Clara climbed the staircase again. She stood before the locked door, her heart pounding. She didn't open it this time. She just placed her palm on the wood. It was warm, as if someone were inside. A chill ran through her spine. Then she remembered something. The strange phone call 2 years after Alma's disappearance. A woman's trembling voice had asked, "Are you still looking for the girl from the poster?" Her mother answered yes, but before she could ask anything else, the line went dead. The call had come from this same neighborhood. Clara had pushed that memory away for years, but now it all connected like pieces of a puzzle she didn't want to finish. That night, while polishing silverware, she noticed a box of photographs on a shelf in the living room. They were old, sepia tones, faded corners. One showed Lucia with a little girl on her lap, both smiling. But in the next few, only Lucia appeared, alone, standing beside a small grave. The name on the headstone was Isabel Muñoz, her daughter, the one she lost years ago. Clara's breath caught. The timeline made sense. Lucia lost her daughter, and months later, Alma vanished. Could she have taken her, raised her, Forced her to be the replacement for the one she buried? As she rearranged the photos, something slipped behind the frame, a folded newspaper clipping. She opened it with trembling fingers. The headline read, "Young girl missing, family seeks help." It was Alma's case. Someone had circled her name in red ink and written next to it, "Found at last." Her stomach turned. The sound of a door closing made her jump. Lucia was standing at the end of the hallway watching her. "Is everything all right?" the woman asked softly. "Yes, Senora," Clara replied, forcing a smile. Lucia stared for a long moment. "You remind me of someone," she said quietly, and then walked away. That night, Clara lay awake, listening. At first, the house was silent. Then came the sound, faint footsteps on the upper floor, slow, careful, like someone walking barefoot. She held her breath. The steps stopped above her, right over her ceiling. The forbidden room. She sat up, trembling, and listened again. This time there was no mistake. A whisper. Her name. Clara. Her whole body stiffened. The sound faded, replaced by the ticking of distant clocks. She wanted to scream, but fear pinned her to the bed. When the first light of dawn crept through the window, she gathered her courage, went upstairs, and pushed open the forbidden door. The portrait hung in its place, unchanged, but something had shifted. The girl's eyes seemed alive now, almost pleading. And for the first time, Clara whispered back, her voice breaking, "I'm here, Alma." The echo of her own words lingered in the air like a promise and a warning. The following days passed wrapped in a silence that felt thicker, heavier than before. The mansion no longer seemed just quiet. It was watching. Every step Clara took echoed like a whisper through the marble floors. The scent of jasmine that had once been faint now filled the corridors, strong and haunting. At night she heard the wooden walls creak and the clocks tick irregularly, as if time itself hesitated to move inside that house. Since discovering the portrait, sleep had become impossible. When she finally closed her eyes, she saw her sister's face, painted still, staring back at her. Sometimes she thought she could hear Alma's voice calling softly, not from the portrait, but from the walls themselves. And every morning Lucia appeared calm, composed, almost radiant. Her cold smile was constant and her pearls gleamed brighter than before. Clara started to notice strange patterns. Whenever she approached the forbidden room, Lucia would appear somewhere nearby, on the staircase, in the hallway, by the window, pretending to dust, rearrange flowers, or simply stand there watching. It wasn't coincidence. Lucia was guarding that door. One afternoon, while cleaning the study, Clara found something that made her blood run cold. A small wooden box, half hidden behind books. It was sealed with a rusty lock and engraved with the initials LM. She slipped it into her cleaning bag, pretending nothing had happened. That night, when the house was asleep, she snuck into the tiny courtyard behind the kitchen. Under the moonlight, she forced the lock open with a kitchen knife. Inside were old newspaper clippings, all about missing girls. Different faces, different names, all circled in red ink. Some were from decades ago, others from recent years, and among them, Alma. The photo had aged, yellowed at the corners, but her sister's eyes were the same. Next to the article, written in elegant handwriting, were the words, "Found at last." Clara's throat tightened. "Found," she whispered. Found by who? Before she could think further, a sound made her spin around. The back door creaked open. Through the darkness, Lucia's silhouette appeared, holding a lantern. Her pale face glowed eerily in the orange light. "What are you doing out here, Clara?" she asked softly, too softly. I couldn't sleep," Clara stammered, hiding the box behind her back. Lucia smiled, that same calm, perfect smile. "Sleep is important. You need rest." Then she turned and disappeared back into the house, the light swaying as she walked away. Clara stayed frozen. Her hands were trembling. There was no doubt now. Lucia knew. From that night on, the noises grew bolder, footsteps above her room, Soft knocks at her door that stopped the moment she answered. A faint, humming voice that sounded like a lullaby. One dawn, she climbed the stairs again, barefoot, holding a candle. The hallway was cold, the air heavy. The forbidden door was slightly open. Inside, the portrait still hung in the same place, but the girl's painted expression had changed. The sadness was deeper, the eyes darker, as if pleading. Beneath the frame, a fine layer of dust had been disturbed. Clara leaned closer and saw something, a small, hidden metal latch. With trembling hands, she pried it open and found a hollow space in the wall. Inside lay a metal box, tied shut with a blue ribbon. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside were letters, old, yellowed, written in Lucia's handwriting, and a gold pendant she recognized instantly. It was Alma's necklace, the one she had worn the day she disappeared. The letters were addressed to "My dear Isabel." The tone started tender but turned strange, desperate. "You are mine now. Don't talk to strangers. Don't look outside. The world already took you once. I won't let it again." Clara dropped the papers. Her knees buckled. The truth hit like a slap. Lucia had lost a daughter and taken Alma to replace her. Then a sudden bang echoed through the room. The door slammed shut behind her. She ran to it. It wouldn't budge. The candle flickered, throwing long shadows across the portrait. From the darkness came a soft whisper, a voice that wasn't Lucia's. "Help me." Clara froze. Her heart pounded in her ears. She could feel the whisper against her skin, faint but real. "Alma?" she whispered back, tears welling. Then, silence. The door creaked open slowly. Lucia stood there holding a candle of her own, her face perfectly calm. "Why are you in here again?" she asked in a voice as smooth as glass. "I heard something," Clara said, barely breathing. Lucia tilted her head. "This house has echoes, dear. Sometimes they sound like people." The woman turned and left, her candlelight fading down the hall. Clara sank to the floor, clutching the pendant in her fist. She now knew two things for certain. Her sister had lived here, and Lucia would do anything to keep that secret buried. That night, Clara didn't cry. She planned. If this story gave you chills, don't forget to hit like, subscribe to the channel, and comment "I felt her whisper," so this story reaches more people who love real suspense. Dawn crept over the mansion like a faded ghost. The walls, once pristine, now seemed to breathe a strange tension, as if they too held secrets. Clara had barely slept. Her eyes were swollen from tears. She didn't remember shedding, and her hand still smelled faintly of the soil from the garden, the same soil she had touched when she'd found that box, that ribbon, that hair, the proof that Alma had lived and died here. But now she wanted to understand why. Why would a woman like Lucia, elegant, wealthy, educated, commit something so monstrous? That question clawed at her, and the answer, she felt, was hidden somewhere in this house. She began her day as usual, trying to keep her movements calm. But every sound, the ticking of the clock, the creak of a door, felt louder than ever. In the IDU breakfast room, Lucia sat by the window, as poised as always, a cup of tea in one hand, her gaze fixed somewhere far away. Her pearls gleamed against her pale skin. For a moment, Clara wondered if those pearls had once belonged to another woman, perhaps even to her sister. When Lucia left for her errands, Clara climbed to the second floor and slipped into the study. The curtains were half closed, letting in a gray light that painted the room with melancholy. On the desk sat a wooden box filled with old photographs. Clara opened it. In the first photo, Lucia smiled, holding a small girl in her arms. The girl had dark eyes, an innocent grin, and wore a blue ribbon, the same as Alma's. On the back, written in delicate cursive, "Isabel, 2008. The next few photographs were of Lucia alone, her smile fading over time. Then an obituary clipped from a newspaper. The name jumped out at her. Isabel Munoz, died at age 10 after a tragic fall. The date was chillingly close to the day Alma disappeared. The air left Clara's lungs. Lucia hadn't kidnapped her sister by chance. She had lost a daughter, and then gone out to find another one. Clara's heart pounded. The picture frames on the shelves blurred through her tears. Her hands trembled as she opened the drawer of the desk and found a death certificate, Isabel's again, followed by hospital reports, scribbled notes, and a letter written in Lucia's hand. They said she was gone, but I saw her face again. God returned her to me. A sound made her freeze. Footsteps in the hallway. Lucia. Clara stuffed the documents under her apron and stepped away from the desk. The door opened slowly, and Lucia's calm voice broke the silence. Looking for something, Clara? No, Senora, Clara said quickly, forcing a nervous smile. Just cleaning. Lucia's eyes studied her face. You shouldn't be in here without permission. Some memories aren't meant to be disturbed. Clara nodded, her pulse racing. When Lucia left, she exhaled sharply. She needed proof, enough to make the police believe her. Later that day, Clara went to the garden. Again. The air smelled of damp earth and decay. She followed her instinct to the spot near the rose bushes where the soil had once looked freshly turned. She began to dig with her bare hands, faster, harder, her nails breaking against stones. Then, metal, a small box. She opened it. Inside was a blue ribbon identical to Alma's and a lock of dark hair. She collapsed, crying silently. There was no longer any doubt. Alma had been there, buried and forgotten under Lucia's flowers. By the time the sun began to set, Clara knew what she had to do. She gathered all the evidence, letters, photos, the hair, the pendant, and placed them inside her bag. That night, when Lucia returned, the house was colder than usual. The wind howled through the hallways, rattling the windows. The older woman entered the living room without speaking. She set her gloves down, removed her pearls, and looked at Clara. You went through my things, didn't you? Clara didn't deny it. You took my sister, she said, her voice steady but low. You made her live here as if she were your daughter. Lucia's face paled. You don't understand, she whispered. I didn't steal her. I found her. God sent her back to me. God didn't send her, Clara said sharply. You trapped her. Lucia's composure cracked for the first time. Her lips trembled. Tears filled her eyes. I loved her, she said. She was happy. She smiled again. Until she wanted to leave. The silence that followed was unbearable. Clara felt her knees weaken. The truth hurt in ways she hadn't imagined. Lucia wasn't a monster born of cruelty. She was one born of grief. But grief doesn't excuse horror. The next morning, Clara walked to the police station with her bag clutched to her chest. The officers listened in disbelief as she told her story, showing them every piece of evidence. Within hours, the mansion was sealed off and Lucia was taken away. She didn't resist. She didn't shout. She simply said, I just wanted her to stay. A few days later, forensic reports confirmed it. The remains in the garden belonged to Alma. Clara returned to the now empty house one last time. It was lifeless without Lucia, stripped of its false elegance. In the room where the portrait had hung, she stood before the bare wall. The faint scent of jasmine lingered, but now it felt like a goodbye. She closed her eyes and whispered, You're free. You're now, Alma. For the first time in years, peace filled her chest. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and comment. Love never justifies lies, to help others find stories that reveal hidden truths. News of Lucia's arrest spread fast. The press called her the Morning Mother. Reporters camped outside the police station, chasing every detail, but Clara avoided them all. She didn't care about headlines. What she cared about was closure. For 6 years, her sister had been a ghost. Now she could rest. The forensic team spent 2 days collecting evidence. The garden was cordoned off. Investigators dug carefully under the rose bushes. They found bones, fragments of fabric, and the necklace Clara had described. It was Alma's. There were no signs of violence. just a broken bone, a head wound. The official report said, accidental fall. But to Clara, it didn't matter. It didn't. Whether it was accident or neglect, what mattered was the truth finally had a name. She was called to testify. The courtroom was small, cold, full of whispers. Lucia entered wearing a simple gray dress, her hair pulled back. She looked thinner, older. Her eyes didn't meet Clara's until the judge asked her to speak. "I didn't mean to hurt her," Lucia said softly. "I just wanted to keep her safe. She looked so much like my Isabel." Clara felt her throat tighten. There was no anger left, only sorrow. The judge declared Lucia mentally unfit for prison. She would live out her days in a psychiatric facility. When it was over, Clara left the courthouse and walked straight to the cemetery. A new headstone stood beside her parents' graves. Alma Rivas, 2002-2019. She placed the portrait beside it, wrapped in glass. The girl in the painting smiled faintly, her blue ribbon bright under the morning light. "Now everyone will know who you were," Clara whispered. "Not someone's replacement. My sister." Days turned into weeks. Life slowly returned. But every time she passed a window or saw a reflection, she felt that faint presence, a whisper of jasmine, a soft breeze that brushed her cheek. Not haunting, just memory. If you believe truth always rises, even from silence, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and comment, "The truth finds light." The trial ended quietly, but the story lived on. Newspapers lost interest, but people whispered about the mansion and the girl in the portrait. For Clara, the noise of the world no longer mattered. She had found her truth, buried and painful, but real. She left her cleaning job and began working with a volunteer group that searched for missing people. Every case reminded her of Alma. Every photograph of a lost child carried a piece of that same ache. But now, she turned that pain into purpose. Years later, the mansion was demolished. In its place, the city built a small park. Clara attended the opening ceremony, standing beneath the new trees planted where the roses once grew. In the center stood a metal plaque she had written herself. "No memory deserves to be buried in silence." She visits the park every year, leaving a white flower beneath the plaque. Not out of sorrow, but remembrance. She no longer dreams of the portrait, nor hears whispers in the dark. The house was gone, but what mattered had survived. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low, she stood there once more. The breeze carried the scent of jasmine through the air. For a moment, she thought she saw a small girl in a white dress with a blue ribbon running through the park, her laughter faint but bright. Clara smiled. Maybe it was just the wind, or maybe Alma had finally found her peace. That night back home, she lit a candle beside the portrait she'd kept. The flame flickered gently as she whispered, "Rest now, sister. I found you." And for the first time in her life, the silence in the room felt like love, not loss. If this story touched your heart, hit like, subscribe, and comment, "I believe in light after darkness." Let's keep telling stories that heal.